Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Welcome back to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. I'm Gary Wilson, your host, and boy, I'm glad to have you back. We've got a great show today. Garrett and Ted Sutton. And Ted is the son, Garrett's the dad. And some of you, like me, will recognize the dad's name, Garrett, because he was part of the Robert Kiyosaki team for a long time. It probably still is. In fact, I should have asked you that, Ted, earlier, or Garrett, excuse me. Several books, some of which I've actually read myself. But first off, guys, thank you, Garrett and Ted, father and son, for being here on the show today. I'm just blown away that you have you guys as guests,
Great. Well, thanks for having us, Gary.
Yeah, Gary, thanks for having us on together.
You got it. By the way, it always makes for a great show when we have a duo on. It's just for whatever reason we can see the reviews that goes through the roof. So maybe it's just more energy. But let's go ahead and kick things off here. So I was doing some reading ahead of time just to prepare, and of course I already knew some of the background there. But the big thing, I guess, that's come out that you really dove in on, guys, is the Corporate Transparency Act, a new law that, really we all have to pay attention to, because if we do follow Robert Kiyosaki's suggestions, we set up companies, which is exactly what I did. But why don't we start there and we'll go from there. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, the Corporate Transparency Act was passed in 2021, and it just became in effect this last January. And it has some serious reporting requirements and some serious penalties if you don't report. $10,000 fines, 2 years in prison. So they're very serious penalties. And Ted can talk about all the necessary things you need to do to comply with the law. But first off, it's important to know that no one's talking about this. The government hasn't put notices out about it. A lot of people are putting their head in the sand. They feel like they're just going to ignore it. But as I mentioned, Gary, the penalties for ignoring it are pretty stiff.
Yeah. Well, $10,000 is painful, but 2 years in prison, that's just, there's no way, Jose, not to mention the food. I need to have home cooked meals. So that wouldn't work. That wouldn't work for me. I'd rather do things the right way, So let's go into a little bit of detail. Let's kind of unpack this a little bit. Most of the folks I work with, they're usually professionals, a lot of business owners, and they have already set up, like an S corp, or if they're a dentist or real estate agents are famous for setting up S corps for their real estate practice. And then even in the ownership of real estate, we usually put those in some type of entity. Usually the classic LLC is where you start, but there's so much more available out there. I mean, there's trust, you can use corporations. You don't have to use S corps and LLCs, but who does this apply to specifically? And should the average investor buying duplexes and flipping homes also be concerned with this, that they're using corporate entities in their holdings?
Yeah. So what's interesting about this law is that the Corporate Transparency Act actually goes after smaller companies. A lot of the laws that the federal government have passed in the past have gone after the big companies, whether they're big businesses, big banks, whatever. But the CTA, Corporate Transparency Act for short, is very unique because it targets small businesses. And so this affects a lot of the professionals that listen to the show, as well as the real estate investors too, because they're the ones who use LLCs and corporations to buy real estate. And so the CTA applies to them. And so if you're one of those small businesses, you're going to need to report 3 pieces of information to FinCEN. That's the branch of the Department of Treasury that's going to be collecting all this. So the first piece of information is the reporting company. And the reporting company is either the LLC, the corporation, or the limited partnership, or any other entity. So you need to report information about the name, its EIN, where it's set up, all of that. And then the second piece of information that you need to report is the beneficial ownership information. And a beneficial owner is an individual who either owns 25% or more of the reporting company, or they exercise
Okay.
quote unquote substantial control where they have management authority. And in that case, you're going to need to report your name, your date of birth, a residential street address, and then you're also going to need an unexpired passport or driver's license that has a number on there as well as an image of yourself. So you are going to need to reveal personal information to the government. And then the third is the company applicant information. These are for companies formed after 2024. And these are the
Okay.
people who either set them up or, direct their setting up. So we here at Corporate Direct, we're a registered agent service. We would be a company applicant. And then it'd also be the person who directs it. So it'd be the business owner. So you do have to report a lot of information. It may not sound like much, but they do get tedious. And, there are some wrinkles when it comes to reporting. But ultimately, big picture here, if you're a real estate investor, business owner, professional, you're going to have to report this information. And you're going to want to make sure you get it in. Because if you don't, as Dad mentioned, you can face $10,000 in fines or 2 years in prison.
Yeah, man, I tell you what, guys, this is pretty serious. I didn't know. I mean, I've been using the same tax accountant to do my reporting for the last 20, let's get the 27th year. Holy smokes. And but he he does, I'm pretty sure he knows, but I'm going to double check and make sure. But here's what's interesting. For years, people were using states, and I'll just pick on one like Wyoming, where you can have a registered agent set up your LLC, and they would guarantee you anonymity, right? Um, it sounds like that might be a thing of the past now. Even if you have a registered agent, if I'm the LLC owner and I use a registered agent to set up the LLC, on my tax, I still have to file and acknowledge me as the owner. Is that right? Regardless, even though the state for years has provided that. I don't know if I'm muddying the waters. Maybe it's two different things, or maybe it's um, that benefit of being in Wyoming goes away or something. I don't know, but the bottom
And
line is you can be found.
yeah, well, and you raise a really good point, Gary. So they actually are two different things. Like when you fill out tax returns, it goes to the IRS, but that information's totally confidential. It's not available to the public. And when you report this information to FinCEN, this is also a confidential database that's only accessible to a few law enforcement agencies. So,
Gotcha.
when you submit your driver's license or your passport, FinCEN, as well as a few law enforcement agencies, are the only ones that are going to see it. So if you have a Wyoming LLC, you list the registered agent address, but your name isn't on the Secretary of State's website. To the public, it'll still be preserved.
Okay.
And so you will still have the anonymity. However, you will need to report information about yourself to FinCEN, which is a confidential database. And, I think that raises the security in question because 30 million small businesses need to report their information there. But, it will not be available to the public. And that's probably the only good thing about this new law.
Yeah. What was interesting is, I've been paying someone for years to do mine. And that actually came from Robert Kiyosaki because I was starting to buy real estate. I was still working at a bank doing mergers and acquisitions. So I was really busy. And I had done my own returns up to that point. But when I started buying real estate, I thought, I'm just going to go with somebody that knows what they're doing. And I'm glad I did because the guy I went to actually owned real estate. And there was a lot more forms I wasn't filing the year before he was filing. And I know people personally today that have been doing their own returns their entire life, but they would set up like a side business thing using an LLC. They probably don't have a clue, you know.
Well,
But I
they're
guess
not talking
pretty,
about this law. And you're right, Gary. A lot of people do
yeah.
not have a clue about it. But, thankfully, you're exposing this information. People need to know about it. If your entity was set up in the year 2023 or before, you have until the end of the year to make this filing. But at the end of the year, there's going to be a crush. So you're better off gathering the information and filing it now. Now, in future years, in 2025, you'll have 30 days to file it. So you set up an entity, you've got to file this information. in 30 days. But as you mentioned, not many people know about it. And there's going to be a big surge at the end to be compliant, because as we've said, the penalties are pretty stiff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I tell you what this falls under is just being an informed consumer. It doesn't mean you have to be the person filing. You know, if you, and I do recommend you have a professional do your filing for you. I call them tax advisors. But there's more to it than that before it even comes into play. Well, I shouldn't say that. Along with that, you know, you want to have to set up the correct corporate structure. And your company, Corporate Direct, is that help people? Like, say, let's take a dentist, for example, who has a practice. Then he or she buys another practice. Now they've got multiple practices. Then they start acquiring, retail rental space and office space. Um, let's say that person approaches you. What makes Corporate Direct separate or unique, and a kind of a separate topic but related? I know I'm giving you a big loaded question here. It all comes down to me to asset protection. We do these things to protect what you've built. You're building a legacy. You're building a company that's generating cash and revenue and building, wealth and income. So there's a lot in there, but does Corporate Direct do this, the filing for to FinCEN on behalf of the business owners? But also, do you guys get more involved with the proper business entity and asset protection and
Correct. Correct.
tell us, help us unpack that a little bit.
We help people structure their affairs so that they're completely protected. So Gary, you mentioned a good point. You've got a dental practice. Maybe you're going to buy a second practice. Do we put both practices into one entity, or do we have two separate entities? That's something we would discuss with you. When you buy real estate, we don't want the dental practice entity to own the real estate. If you get sued as a dentist,
Right,
they could reach your office building. So we want to put the real estate in a separate LLC apart from the business. So we provide these services. We set up the entities. Importantly, we maintain them, because you have these ongoing formalities that you have to follow. We provide the registered agent service in all 50 states. But as you mentioned, this is a new requirement. The Corporate Transparency Act is a brand new requirement that we're helping all our clients and anyone else that needs help to comply with. I personally don't like this law, but our job is to make sure our clients are compliant with the law. And so that's what we've done. We've set it up so that we're going to be making these filings for our clients and reminding them when they need to amend it. When you change your driver's license or passport, you have to amend your filing requirement with the CTA. People will forget that, so we have a reminder system to let them know that you need to amend.
Did you know that you can participate in class every Monday? We call it Monday Night Live, 7 p.m. Eastern, with me and dozens of other investor agents from around the country, in fact, the world. Every Monday, totally free. No selling, no recruiting, just straight up education on anything and everything in real estate. And we have a lot of good guests coming on once or twice a month, bringing in expertise on subjects like how to buy a house with crypto. Okay. How about them apples? What about AI? How's AI affecting our business? How about the metaverse, blockchain processing? We're already using it in title work. So come on to Monday Night Live, be ready to take notes and ask questions, because it's live and engaging, and you get to participate by asking questions and meeting others. So we'll see you there. Go to GaryRealEstateWithGaryWilson.com, click on the resource tab, drop down, and you'll see Monday Night Live. And in there, you can see one of the most recent classes. But more importantly, you can register for class as many as you want going up to like the end of the year, I believe. So in any case, do that. We'll see you on Monday Night Live. Look forward to meeting you in person. Take care. Yeah. It's interesting, so much is changing, and it seems like change is occurring more rapidly as each year comes by and each administration. So now they've been hearing for a couple of years now, oh my gosh, we all these brand new IRS agents out there, and they're hearing the number 87,000. I don't know that they're all IRS investigators or not. It's just what people are hearing. Then they're hearing this. I mean, it really feels like there's more and more pressure on small business owners, which is a lot of us. I mean, I'll give us a plug. Back in the last recession, corporate America was responsible for the loss of a lot of, I shouldn't say responsible, but they accounted for a lot of lost jobs. People were being laid off. Small businesses actually had a big net gain of small business owners, and there's probably some relationship there. But these small business owners feel that sense of American, like I know I'm free. I'm going to be my own boss. They'll work their tails off, but yeah, they'll be free. So they're hearing all this stuff. And now the next question for me is, and I think a lot of people too, is, uh, when we use these corporate entities, how are assets? What does it mean that by asset protection? What's actually protected? How is that protecting us? Um, like separating, putting our ownership of real estate separate from the business ownership of the dental practice. I don't know if you have an example or a case study to help unpack that a little bit, but people, this is getting very serious. So I hope listeners are listening and turning everything else off right now, because this is some serious stuff. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So setting up an LLC is really important because it can protect you in two different types of attacks. So the first attack is what we call the inside attack. So if you have a rental property, let's say that you had it in Florida as an example. So you set up a Florida LLC to hold title to that rental property. And let's say it's a fourplex. Let's say that one of the tenants were to trip and fall, and they were to sue the Florida LLC for negligence. Well, having it in an LLC is really advantageous because it limits what that tenant can collect. They're only limited to collecting the equity in that property instead of them being able to access your personal assets. Now, I mean, insurance is always the first line of defense. So you'll have insurance, but in the event that the insurance doesn't cover you, then having an LLC in place will limit what the tenant can collect. So in that situation, the inside attack, having an LLC just limits what's on the table for them. And then what we like doing is we like setting up a Wyoming LLC to own your interest in your rental properties. So, we have a Florida LLC down here with a Wyoming LLC on top. And the Wyoming LLC protects you in the outside attack. And the outside attack is where you as an individual are sued personally. So let's say that you were to get into a car accident and that car wreck victim were to sue you. If they were to win and, they were to collect from you, then they would only be able to reach what's inside the Wyoming LLC because that's the only one that you own. And the benefit there is that Wyoming has the charging order protection, which is where if any distributions are made out of the Wyoming LLC, then that person collects. But if you don't make any distributions, they have to sit there and wait. So, having that Wyoming LLC is nice because it acts as a blockade. And so that's the structure we recommend for rental properties. But having an LLC is really important because it just limits what people can collect. And ultimately, we are a very litigious society. And at the end of the day, when something bad happens and you're sued, you just don't want your personal assets on the table.
Yeah. Well, I love the explanation. It's funny as my personal attorney, unfortunately, had passed away a few years ago. And I was with him also for 24 years. But one of the first things he ever told me, guys, was when it came to the real estate, I said, so my first line of defense is insurance. And then it's the LLC says, no. So the first line of defense is you being a good owner, a good landlord, making sure your properties are up to code, safe, clean, reliable, and you don't let anything go, no deferred maintenance. Second line is your insurance. And I'll give you a quick example. I had a fire at one of my properties, and it was very kind of a comical situation. At the end of the day, though, insurance took care of everything. I actually made money because they let me pay myself as a GC to run my own remodeling project. Another time, a lady slipped on a bar. Sorry, wasn't bar. So, you're going to love this. The local code had changed to have handrails. Where used to be 4 steps was the requirement. You have to have a handrail, 4 more steps. They moved it down to 3. So I said to the guys, I said, go out there. I know we got some of these. Put handrails in wherever we got 3 or more steps instead of the 4. So literally that night, the cement was drying on one of the properties, and there was an ice storm. And the tenant's daughter had come out and grabbed the handrail, pulled it out of the wall, flipped and sprained her ankle. They could have won a break. guys, all I had to do was pick up the phone the next day with the insurance company. I didn't have to sign anything, go anywhere, do anything. They covered the hospital visit carte blanche, and that because were on top of things, they never threatened to sue me or any kind of thing like that. Um, so that does work, guys. So you being a good landlord first, your insurance, make sure you have good insurance a second, and the third thing is the LLC because it contains what someone's able to attach in a lawsuit. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. That I think everybody feels a lot more comfortable now with why we do that. So now let's take a little step further. I don't know if there's too much content for this one podcast, but do you get involved with trust as a form of ownership too? Like say you have a family that the parents were investors, now the children inherit these properties, and they might start investing too. I mean, is that one, or are there cases where a trust is better than a corporate entity, or is there cases where the two should be working together? I don't
Well,
know because I personally haven't done that.
they work together. So the living trust, the standard trust that people use to avoid probate, they're very useful. They don't provide asset protection. There's a lot of
Mhm.
misinformation on the internet that a living trust gives you asset protection. It doesn't. So
Mhm.
we have the Wyoming LLC. Let's say the Wyoming LLC owns a Florida LLC and a South Carolina LLC. We have the one Wyoming LLC for preventing the outside attacks. The Wyoming LLC, in turn, is owned by the living trust, so that when you pass, you don't have to change title to all these properties. The kids get the ownership of the Wyoming LLC. And so the living trust will pass that interest in the Wyoming LLC. You don't have to go through probate. You don't have to pay the expensive attorney fees of a probate. So they work together. But Gary, you've got to have your listeners beware, because a living trust does not offer asset protection. Either does a land trust. There are a lot of people out there promoting land trusts, and they
Yeah.
don't offer asset protection either. So it's important to know they're kind of basic principles of estate planning. The LLC offers the asset protection. The living trust offers the probate avoidance.
Gotcha. So really what we're doing is we're protecting what we've been able to build over the years, but also have it pass from one generation to another much more easily, smoothly, without having to go through a court process. So we've had to go through that with not me directly, but my mother, one of her actually aunt and uncle, they were not protected, and it was just a big mess. And because she wasn't a direct lineage, an estranged daughter popped up, years later. I felt so bad for my mom. It was a huge nightmare. She didn't know anything about this stuff,
Right.
but we now do. So we have very simple arrangements, but everything is we'll avoid probate, just real simple stuff like with the family home and everything. So Ted, I got to ask you, my upbringing, my dad was career Army and then government. He was a contractor for there. He was a triple dipper. So but I didn't have somebody like your dad. So if you don't mind, share a little bit about, I'm sure when you grew up, you had to go forge your own way. And from what I gathered, you started down one path, but you came quickly into the fold. I think it was engineering. And by the way, I think the combination of being an engineer and a lawyer is an excellent combination. But tell us about that path, if you don't mind sharing, and what how influential was your dad in your decisions? Um, I kind of want to. I hope I'm not getting too personal here, but I think audience is really wanting to know this.
Yeah. No, you're totally good. So, we do have a really good working relationship.
Mhm.
Obviously I was raised by him. I've spent a lot of time around him, and he's been my mentor ever since pretty much I was born. Um, he never really forced me to do anything. He's actually really good at delegating and persuading people. So he never actually, believe it or not, he never forced any of this onto me. I went to elementary school, middle school, high school, and I actually had no plans of being a lawyer. Then I went to college and I got a degree in mining engineering. And I'm a big geography nerd. I like earth science. And having the engineering background does help as a lawyer, because lawyers are notoriously bad with numbers. And so I'm like, okay with numbers. I'm not a math whiz. So, that definitely does help. Anyway, the summer before I graduated college, I worked at a mine in Chile, and it was in the Atacama Desert. It's the driest place on earth. But I spent 3 months there. And don't get me wrong, I love the mining industry, and I had a great time there during that 3-month time span. But deep down, I knew that that wasn't a career path that I wanted, just because you're working in very remote locations, and you're going to have to travel to see your family, and it just wasn't a career path that was for me. And deep down, I knew that. So after I graduated, my parents convinced me to go to law school. So that's when the whole law school thing started, because they persuaded me, look, like, this isn't really a career path that you want to do. You can go to law school, and other doors will open up, and one of them was working with him. So I ultimately made that choice, and went to law school, passed 2 bar exams, and now I'm working with him, and I haven't looked back. So he does a good job at sort of laying things out there instead of making you do it. It's like the options there, and then he just kind of persuades you. So yeah, good for him for doing what he did, because he didn't force anything down my throat, which was great.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously working because he's smiling right now and you don't have any scars. So that's
Yeah. Right.
but I love that style of leadership too. I mean, that was like my dad. He never really, very rarely did he say, you need to do X, whatever. He would always provide, like, he would say, let's think this through. What are the possible outcomes? If you chose X, let's look at those possible outcomes. If you chose Y, let's look at the possible outcomes. And I would choose. And I did the same thing with my son. And my son, I mean, my brother and sister and I, you'll laugh at this. Our grandparents called us the 3 wild Indians, because our mother was the complete, give them all the freedom in the world. I mean, we would dig holes in our backyard and play cowboys and Indians. And my dad would come and was like, what did you do? She was like, well, they're learning, they're having fun. And my dad said, no, we got big holes in our yard, But our grandparents call us that. Yeah. So but when we grew up, we chose 3 different paths, and we're 3 different people, obviously. And I was the one that really thrived in the freedom part, but I was so well structured. I mean, the military was just in my blood. I mean, to today, I get up at like 4 in the morning and do military calisthenics every single day. And then, just the old days completely planned and regimented. But anyway, so back to you now. So 2 generations, your dad always still got plenty of gas in the tank, and Lord willing will be here for a long, long time. But you're another generation now, and in the time that you've been in business, the technology is just, I mean, it's just flying at us at lightning speed. I mean, AI I thought I had everything figured out, and AI shows up, and right after the metaverse and the blockchain processing, I thought, well, that's it, that's the future. And here, so looking ahead, what media are you using to further the business and kind of help you grow your own, I don't want to call it brand, but your own, add your own flavor to this? Are you using technology in the growth of your business? And tell us about that a little bit, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah. So, when it comes to AI, I'm personally, as a lawyer, I'm a little salty about it, because there was some AI that took the bar exam without studying and passed with flying colors. So, that kind of peeves me just a little bit. I'm going to throw that out there, because I took 2 bar exams, and it took me about 4.5 months to study for both. But you are totally right about not just AI, just with technology in general, especially with social media nowadays. So I've been using social media to promote corporate direct, and then also just to educate people about basic corporate law matters as well. So I post a YouTube video once a week, and you can head on over to Corporate Direct's YouTube channel. Just type in Corporate Direct in the search bar, and you'll see my face on the channel. So I do that, and that's important, because if you're not on social media in this day and age, like, there's a good chance your business could go belly up, especially for what we do. So we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, we have a LinkedIn, a Facebook, all of that. So we are mainly using social media just to get the word out there. And it's much different than it was 10, 15 years ago, where it was more about writing books and going to seminars. And now a lot of the emphasis is just using the channels, the new technology that's available to you to get
I still like books. I
do too. Yeah.
I still like the book, but some people don't,
Yeah.
it's the way things are headed. People take in information through video, through other means, and you just have to be aware of your market.
Books are still great, don't get me wrong. But there's just a lot of people out there who like watching stuff instead of reading stuff.
Yeah. What's interesting is I have an Audible account now. Every year my kids get me the renewal, I get 12 new books. So what I found out is there's some books, anything that's like historical. I love history. I love American history. I've got all kinds of, Band of Brothers and just dozens of Killer Angels. But those, I can do those Audible. I can listen. I do a lot of driving back and forth between Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Florida. But the learning stuff, the technical stuff, I need to have a book. So sometimes I've noticed that it's nice to have both. I like hearing it, but then also like reading because I can take notes. And something magical happens when you write. When you use your hand, you're writing, you're using your mind, your eyes, your thought, you're hearing the words in your mind as you're writing. That to me is the greatest form of embedding knowledge, if you want to call it that, so that you have a high retention rate. So, but I want to look at the future. We got another generation coming up. So, Ted, you may be having children now. You may be looking at that in the future. I don't know, but I looked up. I found something called Sunstream. Does that have to do with, um, you know, teaching children, just like Robert Kiyosaki had cash flow for kids? I bought that for my children in the book and everything. I got to tell you this briefly though, because it's comical. So I had a game around the kitchen table with the neighbors' kids and my kids. Of course, I'm thinking in my mind, my kids are going to blow this out of the water because their old dad's a math genius and a big investor. They flunked. I mean, and one of the neighbors' kids, she was a real estate agent, the mom, the daughter just instinctively had it. She knew, get the best properties, get the highest rent. They might cost more, but things like that, she just nailed it. It was really funny. But back to you. Is that part of your future? Is that part of what you do today? Or tell us what the future looks like.
Well, real quick, I'll tell you about Sunstream, and then Ted will tell you about his book on Sunstream. So Sunstream, SUNN, is a new streaming platform that we have started here. Having traveled with Robert Kiyosaki around the world, I know that parents around the world want their kids to know about money, and they want their kids to have a financial education. So one of the key focuses of Sunstream is kids' financial education. We're preparing shows, we're licensing shows so that parents can have their kids go on this platform and understand about money. Now, we also have plenty of movies, documentaries, music, but one of the key focuses is kids' financial education. And Ted has got a free ebook on Sunstream that I'll let him tell you about.
That's right. Okay. So the book is titled The 5 Tricks to Teach Your Kids About Money. And the reason why I wrote it is because there has been a push recently to educate kids on financial education, which I think is fantastic because they definitely need it. But one of the questions that I got was, how exactly do you do it? What are things that you can do to teach your kids about money? And so that's why I wrote The 5 Tricks to Teach Your Kids About Money, just because it provides 5 methods that parents can implement to boost their kids' financial IQ. And it's an illustrated book. It's a very short read. It's only 20 pages long, but there's a lot of good information in there. So if you head on over to sunstream.com/5 tricks, that's SUNNSTREAM.com/5 tricks. And you can download the book for free. I've only sold about 300 copies. My dad is at 1 million. So if you could help close that gap for me to anyone who's listening out there, I would much appreciate it.
And his book is free. So
it's totally free. So you don't even need to pay for it. All you need to do is just download it so I can eventually, hopefully, catch up to my dad who sold 1 million copies. So
Okay.
any help would
Just
be much appreciated.
I'm I'm in your corner, and it's just a small gap. You're only talking
Yep.
999,000. But you know what? I tell you what, man, I've learned over the years. When I first started off in this business, I thought surely everybody's going to love this, and then they're going to find out about it, and it's going to go crazy. None of that ever happened. But over time, I mean, it's just like people look at some of the stuff I've done here, and they haven't heard before. They think it's like an overnight success. And I tell them, I say, well, actually, I've been doing this since 1986. As an investor, in 2002, I got my broker's license to solve the problem of the agent and the investor not understanding each other, and that's now 22 years. So yeah, if you consider 22 years overnight, I'll take the compliment. But of all the books I've written, only one of them, I'm sorry, two of them really get a lot of recognition. The others, I don't know what happened, but you know, maybe they were horrible. Who knows? But I give those are the ones I give away, and I have learned that the more I give, the more I grow. And so now what's interesting, guys, is like I'm still building, but what I'm doing is I'm helping other people build their businesses in real estate, mainly agents. I'm teaching them how to invest, and I'll say, look, if you do this, then you can serve other investors, and they'll like you because you know what you're doing. You can walk the walk and talk the talk, versus all the other agents that can't, and it's frustrating. Plus, now you're in the game immersed, so you'll know when it's time to invest yourself, and that's really the ultimate aim. Is it's not about me, it's about them. And it looks like your dad is figured that out too, and Ted, sounds like you already are too with the book. So I'm gonna go this real quick. Let me please bear with me. So it's Sunstream, SUNN, two N's, right?
Correct.
Sunstream.com/5 links, and the five is spelled out FIVE links,
Five
LINKS.
tricks.
Five tricks. I'm sorry.
FIVETCAS.
5 tricks. Yep.
I can't even read my own writing. So thank you. And then now corporate direct, people, can they still go there and gather basic information? Can they fill out a form, or what's the best thing we can do for people, Garrett and Ted, right now that are listening and really want to act on this?
Well, for the Corporate Transparency Act filings, for setting up new entities, for us to be your registered agent, you can go to corporatedirect.com and schedule a free 15-minute consultation with a incorporating specialist. And so you can talk to them about what you need, how we can help you. That's the best way to get started. As you mentioned, we have a lot of information on the site, free resources. Ted does a video once a week that provides information. So we try to be, a source of information, and also a place where people can go and take care of all their corporate formation and maintenance needs.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Well, guys, I know we're probably past the proverbial half hour they tell us we should all stick to, but you know what? This has been one of my favorite shows of all time, and I really appreciate you taking your valuable time to do this. I think when people look and see what you've been accomplished in your life, Garrett and Ted, in your early life, yours just getting started. You've already gone way further than most other people. They're going to realize how lucky they are. So everybody listening, I'm going to give you this assignment here. I'm a lifelong teacher. Your assignment is to go leave a review for this podcast, okay? And go check out corporatedirect.com, right? And take Garrett's advice and get set up an appointment there. And then for everybody, go to Sunstream with two N's, sunstream.com/5 tricks. Okay. Get the free download for your kids. Take it from there, guys. I normally ask people this question, but I'll ask you together. Any final words of wisdom you can share, and maybe it's a father and son, something you learned about working together that you can share that people might not expect. Or maybe it's something your granddad told you, so.
Gosh. So, one of the things that I've always found is useful is, a lot of people, when they are thinking about real estate, they just overanalyze it. And I think you just need to get into it and know that you're going to make some mistakes. at the start, you're going to make some mistakes. And for me, investing in real estate has been one of the best things I've ever done, aside from having kids. So, just get started. I think that's a good nugget for people.
And then for me,
go ahead.
For me, I'd say it's just important to be patient. I'm getting very close to investing in real estate. I've only been working for 2 years, but I'm getting very close. And another thing is that whatever field you're in, whether you're a professional, a real estate investor, whatever, is that it does take time to get knowledge. I've learned that the hard way, but I have a mentor and my dad who's there to help me out. Things ultimately take time, and it's important to just put in the time to make sure that you get the results you want. And the only way to do that is just by being humble, being patient, and just getting out there and learning as much as you can.
Amen. Two of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard together from father and son is, just get started, take action, and be patient, because it is a process. The only way to get rich overnight is to win the lottery, have the winning lottery ticket. And I'm not here to play the lottery. We're here to build, an empire, something we can leverage to, like Robert Kiyosaki told me. I was at dinner with him that one night in Lake Tahoe, and I told him what I was doing. Bought a lot of real estate, and I started building businesses. And I said, I'm actually making more money with the businesses. And he said, that's exactly the way it should be. So the real estate is simply the foundation upon which you launch these other things. And it's when you build and sell businesses, that's a lot more exciting, a lot more fun. And boy, is he right. So I'm just thrilled that we had you guys on. I really appreciate this, and I appreciate you, the listener. You got a real, head full today. Please leave that review, and we will see you all on the next Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. God bless you and your families.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.